Bhagavad Gita, the Book of Life. Several thousand years ago in north-central India, two people sat in a chariot in the midpoint of a great battlefield. One of them, the yogi, Arjuna, knew that it would not be long before the conflict would begin. So he asked Krishna, the master of yoga, Yogeshwara, what should be his attitude and perspective in this moment, and above all, what should he do? There was no time to spare in empty words. In a brief discourse, later turned into 700 Sanskrit verses by the sage Vyasa, Krishna outlined to Arjuna the way to live one's entire life so as to gain perfect self-knowledge and self-mastery. The battle was ferocious, and as always with war, everyone lost. But when Vyasa wrote his epic poem, the Mahabharata, the Great Indian War, he put Krishna's inspired teachings into it as a precious jewel. Instantly they were extracted, named Bhagavad Gita, the Son of God, and circulated throughout the subcontinent. That was several thousand years ago, and today the Gita is found in nearly every household in India and has been translated into every major language of the world. Literally billions of copies have been handwritten and printed. A few years ago, a spiritual organization in South Africa printed 1 million copies for free distribution. When Rudyard Kipling became a Freemason in Lahore, 4 scriptures were on the altar, including the Bhagavad Gita. What is the appeal of the Gita? First of all, it is totally practical, free of any vague or abstract philosophy. During my first trip to India over 40 years ago, I heard about a yogi who lived in a small houseboat on the Ganges River in the holy city of Benares, Varanasi. He never spoke or wrote, yet every day, for many years, people came to him for advice. How did he manage? He had a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, and after he was told the problem or question, he would open the book, point to a portion, and the inquirer would have a perfect and complete solution to the trouble. My own spiritual awakening began kicking me out of the nest of comfortable religion into a vast world of realities I had no idea how to cope with. I floundered around in the sea of my new horizons until one day I bought a paperback edition of the Bhagavad Gita. I did not read it, I inhaled it. I was not reading the words of a long-dead teacher. My own self was talking to me in the pages of that little book. Nor did I learn anything from the Gita. I remembered that which I had always known. Eternal self spoke eternal truth. The Bhagavad Gita changed my life by giving me life that has never ended. Nothing has ever arisen in my life, external or internal, that the Gita has not made clear and enabled me to deal with or understand. Yet it is not dogmatic. At the very end, Krishna says to Arjuna, "Now I have taught you that wisdom which is the secret of secrets. Ponder it carefully, then act as you think best. No threats, no promises, nor coercion. It is all the reader's hands. It's all in the reader's hands." Even better, the Bhagavad Gita tells us that we can attain a knowing beyond even what it tells us, and it shows us the way. It is a wise resolve to read the Gita every day without fail for the rest of one's life. So if you haven't just figured it out, I'm interested in the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm going to read The Battlefield of the Mind. Part 1 of the Bhagavad Gita for awakening. Most of us have heard the story of the centipede, who, when asked how he managed to walk with so many legs, tangled his legs in the attempt to figure it out and ended up on his back helpless. This is not unlike the person who attempts to plumb the depths of Oriental scriptures. Right away, it becomes evident that they consist of incalculable layers, many symbolic in nature. Furthermore, the meanings of the symbols are not consistent, changing according to the levels on which they occur. For example, on one level, water symbolizes the mind. On another level, the constant flux of samsara, and on another, the subtle life currents known as prana. This being the case, the Western linear mode of thought becomes as entangled and disabled as the fabled centipede. Knowing this to be so, I have decided to avoid subtle symbolism and concentrate instead on the obviously practical side of Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad Gita. For an exposition of the symbolism of the Gita, see Paramahansa Yogananda's commentary, God Talks with Arjuna. Okay, however, I do want to take some time and consider the obvious symbolism encountered in the first chapter of the Gita. We find, so at Kurukshetra, we find ourselves on Kurukshetra, a field of impending battle. It is not as vast as our Hollywood epic-shaped minds might imagine, as can be seen for oneself by a visit to Kurukshetra, not very far from Delhi. At one end is a hillock topped with a huge tree, under which there is a great bronze statue of Arjuna, Krishna, and their chariot. When I was there, only the tree and a large marble replica of the chariot marked where they sat. This is the vantage point from which Arjuna, the great warrior, and Sri Krishna, his teacher, looked out over the field. Today, its tranquility is charming, despite the strong feeling in the air that something tremendously momentous occurred there in the distant past. It is both awesome and soothing. For background information regarding how the battleground came to be thronged with soldiers, chariots, elephants, and other paraphernalia of the deadly war, see the introductory essay, Gita and Mahabharata. Oh yeah, I'm going to have to read that part, I guess, huh? I might have to actually buy the book itself if I can't find. So, translate. Okay. Suffice it to say that the two opposing armies are very easy to morally identify. The Kauravas, led by the murderous prince Duryodhana, are fundamentally evil, although many honorable men have, through various complicated alliances and obligations, found themselves among their ranks. The Pandavas, headed by the virtuous and noble Yudhisthira, the eldest brother of Arjuna, are embodiments of all that is good, among them being the divine Sri Krishna himself, who chose to be the charioteer of Arjuna. The symbolism is not very hard to figure out, leaving aside the complex matter of assigning a symbolic meaning to every person named in the battle narrative. Kurukshetra is the personality, particularly the mind, intellect, of the awakened seeker for higher consciousness. Such a seeker, determined to end the whirling cycle of birth and death, finds that his aspiration itself has inspired opposition from within his own mind and heart, where good and evil, truth and falsehood, ignorance and wisdom, like the Kauravas and Pandavas, have drawn themselves up in readiness for a conflict that must end in the annihilation of one side or the other. Even more daunting is the fact that much considered good is found lining up in support of negativity, and most of the Pandava side will also be blotted out in the eventual transmutation of the individual into a higher state of being itself, much as the endearing ways of infancy and childhood must be eradicated at the advent of adulthood and replaced with completely different virtues. In the chariot set betwixt the two armies, we find Arjuna and Krishna. Many interpretations of these two pivotal figures are possible, nearly all of them correct, but the words of the Mandaka Upanishad, written long before the Gita, are certainly worthy of our attention. And it goes as follows. Like two birds of golden plumage, inseparable companions, the individual self and the immortal self are perched on the branches of the self-same tree. The former tastes of the sweet and bitter fruits of the tree. The latter tastes of neither, just calmly observes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. I can see that. I'm like, yeah. Talking to myself when I get inspired, of course, like usual. The individual self, deluded by forgetfulness of his identity with the divine self, bewildered by his ego, grieves and is sad. But when he recognizes the worshipful Lord as his own self, true self, and beholds his glory, he grieves no more. Yeah. These are two paragraphs. These two paragraphs are a perfect picture of the setting of the Gita. Arjuna is the bewildered and sorrowing Atma, the individual self. And Krishna is the divine Paramatma, the supreme self, from which the Atma derives its very being and existence. Forgetful of its true nature as part of the infinite spirit, the finite spirit passes through countless experiences that confuse and pain it, producing utterly false conclusions that compound and perpetuate the confusion and pain. Only when the perspective of the divine self is entered into can its troubles cease. We can also think of Arjuna as our lower mortal self and Krishna as our higher immortal self. Krishna and Arjuna thus represent both God and man, and our own presently dual nature as mortal and immortal. Keeping this perspective before us, the ensuing dialogue which forms the Gita is to be seen both as God's communication to human beings and the communication of our own divine self with our human self, liberation, moksha, of the spirit being their sole intention. With this in mind, we are ready to begin, and I will be using my own version of the Gita, which is based a great deal on the translation of the Winthrop Sargent, the Bhagavad Gita, published by State University of New York Press, which I recommend as an excellent version, especially since it gives a word-by-word translation of the entire text. Yeah. Part 2, on the field of Dharma. We begin with King Dhritarashtra, the blind father of the evil Duryodhana. Dhritarashtra said, assembled there on Dharma's field, Kurukshetra, desiring war, what did my sons and the Pandavas, O Sanjaya, the field of the Kurus? The opening words of this verse are Dharmakshetri, Kurukshetri, the field of Dharma, the field of the Kurus. Dharma means the right way of thought and action, but it can also mean the accurate expression of one's own dominant character. For Dharma also means quality. This entire world is a Dharmakshetra, a field upon which we act out the character of our inner makeup, the quality of our emotions, mind, intellect, and will. We as individuals are each a dharmic field expressing the actuality of our present level of evolution. How is it, though, that the field of Dharma is the field of the Kurus, the enemies of Dharma? This is necessary for the portrayal of our present situation here in the world. Not only do negativity and ignorance, the enemies of Dharma, dominate society in general, we find within ourselves a welter of negative impulses, conflicts, confusions, fears, and ignorance of all kinds. Yes, we are definitely in and are the field of the Kurus. Whatever our intentions may be, we're going to have to fight through the whole field and wipe out all the Kurus and most of the Pandavas. Remember, we have lived millions of lives, mineral, plant, animal, and human. We have brought all the impressions, samskaras, and habits, vasanas, of those lives along with us. Our past is our present. No wonder we are in trouble. Yeah, that makes sense. And I've said it many times before, like, honestly, reincarnation, like, logically speaking, is the only thing that can fully make sense to me if you are able to find a balance in the universe somehow. Like, for example, you find one thing, it's going to have something that's polar opposite of it. So that's proof of there always being a balance. So there being a balance means that there's no absolute unfair and death is absolute. So I feel like there has to be a continuous, which the most continuous and balance would be in reincarnation. And that's just my possible theory of what makes logically sense to me. So, but yeah. I don't know how long I want to make this video, but I just wanted to kind of like read a little bit about how I am very, very interested in reading about this. I mean, there's so many things I just want to read. I just love reading. I love learning new things so much. It's like my favorite thing. Where did I leave off? I just want to read a little bit more and then we'll probably just end it there. And I still have to finish the rest of the other mystery books. So. But yeah. But as Swami Sri Yukteswar often said, forget the past. The vanished lives of all men are dark with many shames. Human conduct is ever unreliable until anchored in the divine. That's very powerful. Everything in future will improve if you are making a spiritual effort now. And the Gita will help us in this effort. Desiring to fight. Yuyatsava certainly means desiring to fight, but it can also be translated battle hungry. There is deep within us an impulse to divinity, but it has been overlain and overruled by a multitude of impulses to delusion, and delusion produce desires. So they both fight with each other, often on the subconscious level. Subconscious. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Both are battle hungry, for they are fighting for their very life. The Mahabharata war is a historical fact, just as are the field of Kurukshetra, Krishna, and Arjuna. Yet Vyasa is using this setting and the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna to give us spiritual teachings, some of which are in symbol. In the real battle, many families were represented on both sides, which depicts the inner conflicts of human beings, whether spiritually awakened or not. The warriors of ignorance and delusion are children of the blind ego. Dhritarashtra, whereas the inner soldiers of truth and higher consciousness are the children of the spirit self, the divine Atman. The ego is the false self that reigns on the throne of our minds and hearts, blinding us to everything else, making us think that it is the reality of our being that we are it. But it is a lie. Buried deep within is the real self, awaiting its liberation and possession of its rightful kingdom. This is why the evil twin and the good twin plot always appeals to the people. It's very true, yes. This is why the evil twin and good twin. Yep, it is symbolic of our own very dilemma. It's symbolic of our very own dilemma. that we fight with every day within ourselves. The false self, the real self. Son of ego, more of the same. Sanjaya said, King of Duryodhana, seeing the Pandava forces ranged ready for battle, approaching his teacher Drona, spoke these words. Duryodhana is certainly his father in extension, but more dangerous because he can see, that is, he can consciously choose. Okay, he can see, that is, he can consciously choose evil if he feels it suits his own ends. By the way, Dhritarashtra literally means he by whom the kingdom is held. And it means, and Duryodhana means dirty fighter. Interesting. The Bhagavad Gita occurs in the Mahabharata epic only after an immense amount of historical material is given, showing all that led up to the battle. There we see Duryodhana as one of the foulest, most evil figures in recorded history. Many times he attempted to kill the Pandava brothers whose kingdom he had usurped. He also plotted the death of Krishna several times. He is evil, and Vyasa is going to show this to us by his conversation with Drona, a vulnerable man who was his teacher, and one who had given him all his education and training as a Kshatriya, a member of the warrior ruling caste. Actually, the whole Gita consists of two conversations, that between Duryodhana and Drona, though it was really a monologue in the style of all egotists, and that between Arjuna and Krishna. Arjuna pleads with Krishna to teach him, but Duryodhana only seeks to set Drona straight and accuse him for also being the teacher of Arjuna, who is now facing him as an opponent in battle. So it begins. Behold, O teacher, this great army of Prandu's sons, assembled by Arjuna, your brilliant pupil. Okay, so it's like he says that in a way, meaning you see what I mean? Like you got into this mess and then he rubs it in. Okay, next he rubs it in by enumerating the great warriors on the Pandava side. Here are heroes, mighty archers, Bhima and Arjuna's equals, Duryodhana and Virata and Drupada, the great car warrior. Bhima, one of Arjuna's brothers, was perhaps the strongest human being that has ever lived. He was all brawn and no brains, but beloved by those who could survive knowing him. His name means tremendous, but in the sense of terrifying. All those listed by Duryodhana are Maharathas, mighty chariot warriors. Okay, I get it. That's what the car warriors are, mighty chariot warriors, who could fight huge numbers of foot soldiers single-handedly. That makes sense. Drishtaketu, and Chikatana, and the valiant king of Kashi, Parujit, and Kantibhoja, and Shabaya, the mightiest among men, and courageous Yadhamanyu, and valorous Utamahas, the son of Shabhadra, and the sons of Draupadi, all great car warriors or chariot warriors. Well, that tells Drona. Subhadra was Krishna's sister. The sons of Draupadi are the children of the Pandava brothers. Even though Drona got Duryodhana into this tangle, egotists always take the credit for success, even when it is not due to them, but always manage to blame someone else for failure. There is no need to worry for it. Those of us who are indeed distinguished now know, O highest of the twice born, the leaders of my army, I now recount unto you by name. As if Drona would not know all of them very well. This is extremely insulting, as is the way of all bullies. The fact that he speaks of my army reveals his egotism. Twice born was a title referring to the three higher of the four castes, referring to their having undergone a spiritual birth through initiation into the Gayatri Mantra and the spiritual rites of the Vedic religion. Your lordship, and Bhishma and Karna and Kripa, victorious in war, Ashwatthama and Vikarna, and the son of Samadatta also, and many other heroes, whose lives are risked for my sake, ready to discharge various weapons, all very skilled in battle. Yes, all those who serve ego and work to ensure its preservation are certainly risking their lives. It is amazing to see how the world and the ego devour a person, sapping his life, turning him into an aimless husk, and all while he thinks he is really living the good life. This is the fatal illusion in which humans dwell. Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. Only those who have glimpsed the truth of their inner divinity have a chance at escaping the realm of death. Bravado, not bravery. Sufficient is that force of ours guarded by Bhishma. Insufficient, though, is the force guarded by Bhima. Stationed in your proper places, whatever be your positions, certainly all of you, protect Bhishma. It is true that the Pandavas were greatly outnumbered by the Kauravas, so naturally those that see only with the bodily eyes would think that their numbers were inadequate. But throughout history, great victories have been won by a few, sometimes even by only one. In the Bible, the 7th chapter of Judges, we find that God kept telling Gideon that he had too many soldiers and ordering that he pare down their numbers. He did so, and they routed a huge number of soldiers without even fighting. It is foolish to think that numbers make either strength or right, but that is the way of Duryodhana and his kind, empty noise. That's so interesting, the way that's put. And you know what? That is quite promising, honestly, when you really think about it. Yeah, because it's such that's a typical egoistic viewpoint to view things such as based off of numbers. It's like the illusion, because the reason why it could be detrimental is we would also fall into place by relying on such numbers, and the bigger the better all the time, therefore gives us a false sense of truth, a false sense of identity. It also could attribute to insecurities that we harbor within ourselves. So that does make a lot of sense to me, and I can see where he's going with that, big time. Because it's not about the numbers, it's about something that is not physically seen with the naked eye, with the human ego mind. So yeah, that's very true. Like, for example, somebody who is not well known, someone who only a couple people know, could be the very reason why such movement and change in the world happens, because it's the way that it affected a particular individual that went on in the future to create something massive and amazing and life-changing. But they remain unknown. I'm sure there's quite a few. Who's to say that it's only the ones that we read about in books? Who's to say it's only the ones that are known? There's so many unknown heroes out there. So it's also heartwarming when you think about it too, because I think that just offers so much more depth to existence. So to make Duryodhana happy, the aged Kuru Grandshur Bhishma, bellowing with a tremendous sound of a lion's roar, then blew his conch with great power, making a tremendous sound. Thereupon the Kuru's conches and kettle drums and cymbals and trumpets were sounded all at once, producing a tumultuous uproar. That kind of reminds me of Book of Revelations. There is nothing new. In many ways, bullies and thugs make a lot of noise to intimidate others. Yes, that is very true. And it often works, but not this time. Divine sound. Then Krishna and Arjuna, standing at the great chariot, that was yoked with the white horses sounded forth their divine conches. This is something completely different, not just more of the same. The symbolism here is important. Horses are symbolic of life force, of prana, of energy, power, self. White horses symbolize the powers of divine light. Furthermore, the conches of Krishna and Arjuna were not mere seashells like those of the Kurus. They were divya, divine instruments of light. All that exists is vibration. Vibration, prana, frequency. Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, all that exists is vibration. The sound of the Kurus, conches, represent the vibrations of Maya, of delusion and ignorance, of materiality and ego. Whoa. What the crap? No way. Holy crap. That's insane. Well, I'm sorry. I'm just getting like a huge boom for you right there. That just like hit me in the freaking spiritual like pineal gland. Like got punched right there in the pineal gland. The sound of the Kurus. So the Kurus are the the opposition, represents that negative energy, right? The sound of it represents the vibrations of Maya, Maya, Mayans. Mayans used to sacrifice people. They were cannibals. They sacrificed, made human sacrifices. They ended up killing each other, and it literally their whole they disintegrated because of the darkness they fell into. But yeah, anyways, the vibrations of Maya. And it says of delusion and ignorance, of materiality and ego. But the sound of the Pandava conches represent the divine inner sound of the highest level of consciousness. The sound of the Kurus is intended to make the spirit faint. But the sound of the Pandavas, the vibration of truth, enlivens, inspires, and strengthens the spirit. The names of the conches are in titles of divine sound and indicate its powers when invoked by the yogi. Krishna blew Panchajanya, Arjuna blew Devadatta, and Bhima of ferocious deeds blew the great conch Pandra. King Yudhishthira, Kunti's son, blew on Anantavi Jaya. Nakula and Sahadeva blew on Saghosha and Manipushpaka. Panchajanya was the name of an evil enemy defeated by Krishna. Some say he owned the conch that later bore his name. Some say that he was a shape-changing demon that lived in the conch, which was under the sea, and others that Krishna made a conch out of his bones. Wow. But a great yogi once told me during a conversation in Rishikesh that it is a contracted form of Pancha Vijaya, which means 5 victories, meaning the spiritual victory over the 5 elements, the Buddhas, and mastery of the 5 bodies, koshas, and the 5 senses. Devadatta means God-given, the key to liberation given by God, Ishwara, himself to human beings. Pandra, the yogi told me, means mighty sound or of a mighty sound. Anantavijaya means unending victory. And Saghosha also means making a great noise. But the yogi said it also means making a sweet, soothing sound. Mani Pushpaka literally means jeweled bracelet or circlet. In verse 7 of the 7th chapter, we are told that on me, all this universe is strung like jewels on the thread. Yeah, like the solar system. The solar system, like it looks like a bracelet when you look at it. The planets are like beads. So cool. So strung like jewels on a thread, but the yogi told me its intended meaning is mind like a flower, opened like a lotus, at the shining of the light of the self within. It can also mean aerial chariot of the mind, opening and flying in the sky of consciousness, the Chitakasha, the lotus. You know, that reminds me, one of my favorite Chinese folklore stories was the Lotus Prince. And I remember when my mom and I went to Taiwan, like a long time ago. I was like 5 or 6 years old and we went and we got some like Chinese VHS like tapes of like cartoons and stuff. And there was one that was of like, I got one that was the Lotus Prince, which is Naya or Nuoza, not Naya, Nuoza. And then the other one was the legend of the white snake. So the white snake story is a love story, a Chinese, I think it's a Chinese love story of where a white snake was saved by a boy, saved the life of a white snake. And when he saved the white water snake, she transformed into a beautiful woman or something like that. Super cool stuff. I love like very old stories like that. Because there's always like a moral too. Like they all had morals to it. I'm kind of ranting on and losing track what I'm talking about. So whether any of these meanings are correct or intended by Vyasa cannot be known for sure, since Sanskrit also has undergone mutations over time. Anyhow, these are good speculations, I think. The other Pandava leaders on the battlefield sounded their conches as well. And Kashi's king, the supreme bowman, and the great warrior Sikandi and Drista Dayamana and Bharata, and the invincible Satyaki and Drupada and the sons of Draupadi, O Lord of the earth, and Subhadra's son, the mighty armed, each blew upon his conch. This is a symbolic picture of the yogi engaged in the interior battle, who has marshaled all his faculties in meditation and united them, causing them to vibrate throughout his being. So the next verse says, throughout the sky and the earth resounded the terrific noise which rent asunder the hearts of those in Dhritarashtra's ranks. Divine light and divine sound resound throughout the total being of the yogi and burst apart the hearts of all the foes of the self, first rendering them powerless and then annihilating them. So I think I'm going to leave it there. But this is definitely an interesting read. I would like to actually read the actual book itself, but this is kind of like a nice little, this is this one I got from the site ocoy.org, but this is Dharma for Christians. It has the Bhagavad Gita for awakening on the, so there's all these different ways how it ties together with Christianity and religions, how they all have these commonalities, which I think is really awesome. And I just love learning about stuff like that. Anyways, let me know what your thoughts are. I really am excited to get into more stuff and learn more stuff. Peace out.